It's PyramKing, and I'm really excited to bring to you my first video for Legends of Saltmarsh, my next big epic project. You might be asking, what is Saltmarsh? Well, it is an adventure book and settings book for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, known as Ghosts of Saltmarsh. And this is interesting. It has 7 adventures in it, adventure anthology of AD&D adventures that have been updated to 5th edition, that takes place around a village known as Saltmarsh in the world of Greyhawk. So it's got a settings with some local areas, the Hool Marshes, the Dreadwood. These were all original Greyhawk settings. It also has some nautical rules there in it as well, some ship encounters, monsters, and some magic items. And I personally believe this is probably one of the most underrated official 5th edition books out there. I highly recommend it. And it was my choice to do my next project, Legends of Saltmarsh. Now, you might be asking, what is Legends of Saltmarsh? Well, this is an epic project in which I visit the book, I flesh out the village of Saltmarsh, the existing adventures. I'm going to add some additional adventures, some encounter tables, some player handouts, weave in some lore from Greyhawk. I'll be working with my donating members with some playtest material to eventually release free PDF guides for the entire community. I will also be releasing Foundry Adventure modules for the Foundry VTT platform. This will include both a 5e version for all this content that I'm putting together, as well as a system agnostic. So if you're interested in running Legends of the Saltmarsh in OSE, BX, Old School Essential, Shadow Dark, whatever your game of choice is, there will be a system agnostic version as well. I'll be working with a legendary map maker, DM Andy, who did all the beautiful maps for Legends of Barovia, and a huge team to bring all of this content with you, along with all of my supporters who their ideas and suggestions contribute to making those final PDF guides. If you're interested in my last project, Legends of Barovia, expanding upon Curse of Strahd, it's already completed. We're releasing our final versions now to the community. There's over 40 PDF guides and adventures that take place in the world of Barovia. You can check that out. I'll put a link down in the description. Now, you might be asking, why did I choose Ghosts of Saltmarsh as my next big epic project? Well, there are 4 reasons, and one of the reasons is for this video about the adventures in here, and there are over 20 adventures in here. So the first reason why I chose Ghosts of Saltmarsh is nostalgia. Just like Curse of Strahd, I had played the first 2 adventures in here, Secrets of Saltmarsh, The Sinister Secrets of Saltmarsh, and The Danger of Dunwater, and I played in Greyhawk, and so I have some nostalgia towards it. The second reason was the setting for Ghosts of the Saltmarsh. This takes place in the world of Greyhawk in a coastal setting, and I believe it is the most diverse geographically and topography as well as lore. I mean, we've got a coastal village, we've got rivers, swamps, marshes, nautical adventures, deep forest adventures, island adventures, there's even mountains nearby. So if you want to run the adventures in here or your own homebrew adventures, there's a really diverse geography as well as some really, really cool lore. The third reason, pirates. I am a huge fan of pirates. I grew up sailing, even racing sailboats. I'm a U.S. Navy veteran. I have lived in the Caribbean. I have done scuba diving, read pirate books, pirate lore, fiction. I mean, my favorite ride at Disneyland is Pirates of the Caribbean, and this has got nautical and pirates in it. In fact, there are some nautical rules in the back. They do need an update. I'll be doing that with Legends of Saltmarsh, is updating those nautical rules, making them a little bit better, including some black powder rules in here. But I mean, pirates. I mean, come on, pirates in D&D. I mean, that's way cool. And the fourth reason, the reason for this video, is after reading through this book several times, I realized that there are more than 20 official Dungeons and Dragons adventures tied into this book, more than any other official 5th edition book that I have looked at. In fact, there's a lot more than 20. We're going to be doing a countdown of all of those adventures in this video. Now, before we do the countdown of these adventures, we're going to be looking at 2 regional maps as well as a nautical chart. I had these made for Legends of Saltmarsh, and I have made these free for the community and included a PDF with all the adventures we're going to be talking about here that includes links to where you can get these on Drive-Thru RPG, DMS Guild, or Witch Books, and some other information that you will find useful if you want to include any of these adventures into your own, or if you'd like to join me in my epic journey through Legends of Saltmarsh. So let's begin the countdown, and the first 7 are really easy because they're the 7 that are already listed in here. But I thought we'd visit those first. I'll be looking at the original module and talking about where they're placed in Legends of Saltmarsh. So the very first adventure in here is, whoops, it's certainly not that one. It's this one here, The Sinister Secrets of Saltmarsh. U1 adventure. I played this back in the 1980s. It's a level 1 to 3 adventure, and it actually takes place just outside of Saltmarsh and in a haunted house. There's a nautical theme to it. I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's a really good adventure, and it really introduces the locale and what's going on in Saltmarsh. Let's take a quick look at the map to tell you where it's located on the map here. And that is located right here in Saltmarsh. We got a Dreadwood regional map, so let's zoom in on that. So there we have Saltmarsh right there. So this is where the first adventure takes place, is right in the village of Saltmarsh. Now let's look at adventure number 2, which is Danger at Dunwater. Now I also played this one in the 1980s. Again, it's tied into Saltmarsh. Let's take a look at where it is on the map. This involves a bunch of lizard folk, and that takes place right here at the mouth of the Dunwater River, coming out into the Javian Bay, and we've got the lizard folk lair right there. The third official adventure listed in the book is an adventure that was originally written in Dungeon Magazine number 123, and it's a salvage operation. It's a nautical adventure. And now I have been debating on where I'm going to be placing this, but let me give you an idea where I want to put it here. We've got a nautical map here of the Javan Bay. I'm going to be probably running this at the south end of the Javan Bay off the Eel Coast near Crab Key. Right down here somewhere is where I'm thinking about placing this adventure. The next official adventure in the book is Isle of the Abbey. This came out in Dungeon Magazine number 34, and it is already located on our map. You can see that island's right close near to Saltmarsh itself. And there it is, Island of the Abbey. We have another regional map of the Dreadwood. You can see the Abbey Isle. Isle is right here off the coast of Saltmarsh. The number 5 adventure that you're going to find in Ghosts of Saltmarsh, listed in there, converted to 5th edition, is the final in the trilogy, the U3 trilogy, The Final Enemy. And this one takes place in off the mouth of the Javan River here, right over here. So the Javan River comes out and it kind of breaks off, and there's another little river here known as the Black Drain, and the stronghold from the enemy, the final enemy, is located right here. Now, this was, I believe, a level 3 adventure back in the day. They've upgraded to like a level 6 or level 7 adventure in here. Now, the 6th adventure in official adventure is Tamarit's Fate. And this one actually takes place in the world of Greyhawk. It's another nautical adventure. I'm kind of, wondering where I'm going to be placing this adventure. It's going to be somewhere at sea. I haven't totally determined that, as I'm working on the campaign guide right now for Legends of Saltmarsh and these adventures. But it will certainly be somewhere located out in the nautical area here. We'll use the Javan Bay chart. I was actually thinking about placing it somewhere out here. Maybe in the Tyrants or something like that. Not too sure yet. So it's something I'm still thinking about. Don't have an idea yet exactly where we're going to place that one. Now, the number 7 adventure is one that I'm really fascinated by. I haven't played it. I've read through it. It originally came out in Dungeon Magazine 121. It didn't take place initially in Greyhawk, but in Ghosts of Saltmarsh, they placed it in Greyhawk, but they left it up to us, the Dungeon Master, of where to put it. Now, I actually put it, let me show you where I put it. First of all, the Styes is a decrepit seaport. It's kind of fallen on hard times. It's in disarray. There's a nasty black market. There's cult. It's a dangerous, think of a really dangerous, nasty seaport from the medieval times with all kinds of creatures and adventures there. It's a fantastic location for adventures. Now, I actually placed this in Port Torvin right over here. And let me tell you why. I wanted to give you a reason why I put it into Port Torvin. And that's going to help if we look at our regional map and give you a little background in history here, because this is pretty important, especially for the last adventure and that it takes place in the skies. Now, you see this is all from Greyhawk. I'm going to be talking about Greyhawk lore here, which is incorporated not only into Legends of Saltmarsh, but it's referenced also in the book Ghosts of Saltmarsh. The Kingdom of Kalan used to control all this area, in fact, down past the Dreadwood Forest, all the way into the south here where you see Hold the Sea Princess. And there's a major river here called the Javan River. You can see it runs all the way along these mountains through the village of Krylor, Longspear, all the way down past Kimberton, coming out through the Hool Marshes and dumping into the Javan Bay. Now, Port Torvin was a major and important seaport 100 years ago because all those goods, the raw materials, gold, silver, finished goods, would be loaded up on barges and boats and headed down this river all the way out to Port Torvin, in which they were repackaged, put on ships, and sailed out into the Azure Sea around the world of Greyhawk. So it was a major shipping port. Think of the Javan Bay and the Javan River is like the Mississippi River and the mouth of the Mississippi River, and how important Louisiana has been as a major seaport, trading seaport. Well, that's what happened with Port Torvin. Now, in the war with the pirates had sailed up through the Straits of Monmurg and had taken the port of Monmurg. They had taken the West Keep here in the Hool Marshes, and they eventually took the port of Torvin. And now it's been for 100 years under the rule of pirates. And therefore, it's fallen on harder and decrepit times. And people commonly refer to it as the Styes. It's officially still Port Torvin, but it's now called the Styes because it's fallen on kind of more decrepit, dark times. You've got thieves and rogues and black market. It's a really, really cool location. It's great for adventures. I'm going to really be working and expanding upon it in Legends of Saltmarsh. So those are the official 7 easy adventures because, well, they're listed in here. But I told you there were over 20. Well, the next 7 are also listed in here. These are official adventures listed in Saltmarsh. Let's take a look at those. And the next one on our list comes, I actually printed the page out from the book, is from the Tales of the Yawning Portal. Now, the Tales of the Yawning Portal is another great book to pick up because what they did is they took 7 really popular Dungeons and Dragons, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and 3rd edition adventures and updated them to 5th edition. And in Ghosts of the Saltmarsh, you can see in this text, they recommend those adventures from the Tales of the Yawning Portal to place in Saltmarsh. Now, what's interesting about these 7 adventures, 4 of them actually do take place in the world of Greyhawk, and we'll be talking about them. Now, I don't necessarily agree where they place all of these adventures because there's 3 adventures that they just kind of shoehorn into Greyhawk, and they've actually moved some of them around that take place in Greyhawk. So let me give you my thoughts and ideas where these adventures should take place and the reasons why. So this is the next 7 adventures in here. The first one in here is we have the Sunless Citadel. And I think this fits really well into the Dreadwood. So I agree with Ghosts of Saltmarsh. We're going to place that in the Dreadwood. Let's take a quick look at where the Dreadwood is here so you know what I'm talking about. And that's this area up here. In fact, we have a Dreadwood map right here. So I would be placing the Sunless Citadel somewhere here in the Dreadwood. So that's a pretty easy one. The next one we have in here is the Forge of the Fury. And this is a very interesting adventure. It's a D&D 3.0 adventure. It doesn't officially take place in Greyhawk. However, it involves dwarves and orcs and a pretty epic battle. Now, they suggest to place it in some island. I disagree because there's some great lore in a location where this would perfectly fit. Let's take a look at the map and talk about it right now. And we're going to look at our regional map. And I'm going to give you a little Greyhawk history here. There are 3 states up here known as the Ulick states. And the last one down here, south of this river here, all the way down to the coast, the capital of Gygax here, is known as the Principality of Ulick. And this is ruled by dwarves. And there's a mountain range that runs right along here called the Lortmill Mountains. Now, in Greyhawk history, there was known as the Hateful Wars. So on the west side of these mountains lived an elvish kingdom. It's up here in the north. That's the Duchy of Ulick. There's the County of Ulick in the center that was ruled by humans. And then you have the dwarves down here. And in these mountains were goblins and orcs. And they would go down there and they would raid these villages and kill humans and dwarves and elves. And they all got together. The humans, dwarves, and elves got together to fight off the orcs and the goblins. And they pushed them out into this peninsula here. And so it's called the Hateful Wars. It took place a long time ago. But I'm thinking dwarves, orcs, mountain range. I mean, this is the place where you want to have that Forge of the Fury, would be right in these mountains, maybe near the East Pass, somewhere in these mountains near Gygax. And the players can easily sail from Saltmarsh or Seaton up to Gygax, which is a really cool, interesting seaport. If I was going to rewrite, by the way, Waterdeep, I would certainly place it here in Gygax as well. So Forge of the Fury is going to be placed in Legends of Saltmarsh in this location right here. Let's look at the next one in the list here. And we have an actual adventure that does take place in the world of Greyhawk. It's C1, the Hidden Shrine of Tamalkan. I didn't play this back in the day, but I am familiar with it. It's more of a Aztec kind of jungle adventure. And it actually takes place, unfortunately, not on the regional map that I've made of Greyhawk, but there's part of it in which it does take place. So let's take a quick look at that, and I'll show you where I'm going to place that one. So to the very south of the Gulf of Jeklia down here is a jungle area. This is a big gulf, and there's a landmass down here that comes up in this peninsula, and this peninsula is covered in jungle. So I'm going to place that Hidden Shrine adventure, the Hidden Shrine of Tamalkan, right here in the Hook Peninsula. You know, maybe the players have to get through Fort West Hook and travel up this river into this inland lake. That is where, for the Legends of Saltmarsh, I'm going to be placing that adventure. Now, adventure number 11 from the Yawning Portal is S2 White Plume Mountain, which also does take place in the world of Greyhawk. Now, Saltmarsh, again, recommends it sticking it on some island. I think that's a crappy idea. It actually takes place inland, but unfortunately not on the regional map that I've made. So I'm going to tell you for Legends of Saltmarsh where I'm going to be placing that. And I think there's an excellent location, and that location is right over here in the Crystal Mist Mountains. Now, south of the Crystal Mist Mountains, I don't have it labeled here as the Hellfire Furnaces. I think up here in this mountain range, where you've got a gigantic volcanic mountain, this is a perfect place to have White Plume Mountain Adventure. It's going to be set out over here west of the Hold of the Sea Princess. Okay, what's next in here? The next one we have listed in here is from the Forgotten Realms. And I do have Dreams of the Red Wizards in here. Who's actually wrote this, when they were writing D&D Next, they came up with a bunch of adventures, which is loosely tied to the Dreams of the Red Wizards. It's called Dead in the Thay. It's a D&D Next adventure that was rewritten for Tales of the Yawning Portal. And it is one of these, you know, it's kind of a tribute to some of those massive dungeon crawls like Tomb of Horrors or whatever. And they made a recommendation, Gulfs to Saltmarsh, of like, put it in the Dreadwood. I said, no way. I know exactly where I'm going to be putting this adventure. And that is going to be right here up in the Tors. So the Tors is a mountain range that comes out from the Crystal Mist Mountains. I am placing this underground dungeon adventure in the Tors Mountains in here. Now, number 13 adventure, this again is from the Yawning Portal, is adventure that I am familiar with. I did not play it, however, and that is Gary Gygax's G1 to G3 adventure module Against the Giants, which actually takes place in Greyhawk, and it takes place actually on our map. So we didn't have to do too much adjustment for this one. This is an adventure against giants, in the mountains. Let's take a look at it here. And that takes place up here in the Jotuns range. So north of Crystal Mist Mountains, north of the Yeomanry, this is where Against the Giants will be taking place, the G1 to G2. Again, it's in the Yawning Portal for 5th edition. Now, the last adventure that's in the Yawning Portal is an adventure that I actually played. I actually played it twice, and, well, needless to say, in both times, it was total party kills. And that's the very famous adventure, Tomb of Horrors. And Legends has it, and I don't know the full scope of it, but Gary Gygax wrote this as kind of a test to see if anybody could get through the ultimate dungeon. And it doesn't officially place, it takes place in Greyhawk, but not in a particular location on this map. In fact, I believe Gary Gygax came up with like 5 or 6 different places in which you could place it within Greyhawk. One of those was an island, and I think that's a perfect idea for Tombs of Horrors. Let me show you where I'm placing it for Legends of Saltmarsh. And I'm going to be placing it out here on this island north of the Isle of Fair Wind. So this island up here, I'm going to be placing in the Tomb of Horrors. Okay, we are at 14 adventures here. 14 adventures here already. We did the 7 that are listed in here. We did the other 7 that's easy to find in here. Those are the ones that are just listed in here. Pretty easy to find. 14 adventures already. But I promised you over 20. So the next 2 adventures in here are actually listed in the book. They're actually named in the book. And the first one in here is, let me take a look here, Temple of Elemental Evil. So in Ghost of Saltmarsh, it mentions in here the Drowned Forest that there's a cult here worshiping Zugtamoy. Now, Zugtamoy actually is imprisoned in the ruins of Temple of Elemental Evil before her plan is complete. In my idea, what I'm going to include in Legends of Saltmarsh is as the players are in the Drowned Forest and they find this cult, the cult has opened a portal that takes the players to the Temple of Elemental Evil. Now, Temple of Elemental Evil, T1 to T4, great adventure, by the way, a very popular adventure, actually takes place in the world of Greyhawk, except for it's just off our regional map. So I'm going to show you where I am placing this. Again, the player characters will be teleported. The cult has opened up in the Drowned Forest, a teleportation that teleports them to the Temple of Elemental Evil. Let's take a look at where that's going to take place. Now, if we look at our regional map, the Temple of Elemental Evil happens way up here somewhere. It's also attached to the adventure that takes place in the village of Hamlet, which is up here. So I am going to be placing it right here on the eastern side of the Lockmill Mountains, up over here. So that's where it's going to take place, just in case. My idea is the characters get teleported there, they go through that adventure, and they can teleport back to the Drowned Forest. But if not, they can come through the mountain range and get in here to the capital of the Duchy of Auric here, which is a High Elven state. It's the capital here, Tringli, which is run by the High Elves. So it's just another way for them to get there. So that's an actually official adventure that's actually listed here in Ghost of Saltmarsh. It's right there. Temple. I even highlighted it. Temple of Elemental Evil. That's the text from Ghost of Saltmarsh. Now, the next adventure, adventure number 16, is it's the best Easter egg in Ghost of Saltmarsh, no doubt. I think it's probably one of the best Easter eggs of any 5e book that I've ever found. And when I first saw it, I had one of these deja vu moments. I recognized the name, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And let's take a look. In the book, it's on the map, and there's actually text in there called the Tower of Xenopus. And it says in here, the wizard Xenopus once dwelled in the tower on the cliffs outside of Saltmarsh. He built his lair next to the remains of an ancient graveyard rumored to be haunted. Now you can actually see this. Here's the map that comes with the book. Here, by the way, this map is kind of screwy because north is pointing over here to the right. So it's west. The tower is west of Saltmarsh, even though it looks like it's north on the map. The north is actually pointing this way. Pointing this way, but on my screen it's pointing this way. Well, anyway, you can see it out there on the map. So I was looking through this, and at the very end of this section, it says, the details of the deep dungeons are left to the dungeon master's invention. And I thought to myself, this name sounds familiar. I'm having this deja vu. I've seen this Tower of Xenopus before. I haven't played in it, but I remember this name. And so I was searching through all the Dungeons and Dragons, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Adventures, and I couldn't figure it out. And a while ago, last year, I was talking to somebody. I said, look, I'm working on Ghosts of Saltmarsh for my next big project, Legends of Saltmarsh. And this tower, this name is it's bothering me. And he started laughing. He goes, yes, it is an actual adventure. And that adventure came from the first basic set known as the Holmes Edition in 1977. At the end of the rules, there was a sample adventure called Sample Dungeon. And the very first paragraph, I have the paragraph from the rules here, says, 100 years ago, the sorcerer Xenopus built a tower on the lower hills overlooking a port town. The tower was close to a sea cliff west of the town and appropriately next to a graveyard. It's the exact same description in Ghosts of Saltmarsh. And in the rule book here, the whole dungeon is laid out. There's a map of the dungeon, there's encounters and everything. And if you have access to the Holmes edition of D&D, that entire Tower of Xenopus and the dungeon is all written in there. Now, it's pretty hard to find this edition of D&D, the basic set. Most people play the Mulvey basic set, the red box. This is the earlier edition, the 77 edition. But I found something really cool. And that is somebody went ahead and took that 1977 basic sample dungeon, the Tower of Xenopus, redid it for 5th edition basic rules, and included suggestions on how to incorporate it into Ghosts of Saltmarsh. You can download this on DMS Guild. In the PDF, I'll put a link so you can go ahead and pick it up. So that's awesome. We are now at 16 official D&D adventures that are actually named in this book. But I promised you 20, didn't I? Well, the next set of adventures are official D&D adventures that aren't named in the Ghosts of Saltmarsh, but the locations are referenced in the Ghosts of Saltmarsh. So I'm including these as official adventures that have a link to this book. So the next one up here is the adventure Baltron's Beacon. Now, this was I7 module. It was for levels 4 to 8 adventures. There is a version of this for a 5th edition conversion I found on Drive-Thru RPG. And let me show you where this one is located on the map. This is located in the Cool Marshes. This is an official Greyhawk adventure, and it is located, let's look at the Dreadwood here, because I actually put it on here. Here it is. Here's Saltmarsh, and there, right over here, is Baltron's Beacon. So we have Baltron's Beacon, the I7 adventure, official Greyhawk adventure listed here for you to explore. That's number 17. But what about number 18? Number 18 is probably one of the most popular D&D adventures. You probably already played it or know it if you're a D&D aficionado, and that is Tomb of the Lizard King. Now, interesting enough, Tomb of the Lizard King wasn't specifically created for Greyhawk. However, the world of Greyhawk has the locations listed in the Tomb of the Lizard King. So it's kind of like this backward connection. So the world of Greyhawk has the Count of E-O-R in it. I guess that's how you pronounce it. There's references to villages in the world of Greyhawk. So because it's referenced in the world of Greyhawk, there is the Hool Marshes. Those villages are there. Well, in my opinion, I2, Tomb of the Lizard King, fits into the world of Greyhawk really easy. Let's take a look at where that one takes place on our map here. The Tomb of the Lizard King is, you'll notice that the palace of the Count is right here in Vendar, and Kimmerton is the capital. And so the adventure takes place around here. There is a place called the Great Bridge, which crosses the river over the giant marshes, and there's a little village called Wacombe. And so the Tomb of the Lizard King actually happens very close to Baltron's Beacon, in this area right here. And that makes sense because we already have that lizard folk layer with the danger of Dunwater. So we got some more lizard, Tomb of the Lizard King located right here. So that's number 18. Now, number 19 adventure actually takes place connected to the Hold of the Sea Princess. So this is kind of a loose connection. The Hold of the Sea Princess and the pirates are mentioned in Ghosts of Saltmarsh, and this takes place in the Hold of the Sea Princess or next to the Hold of the Sea Princess. So I'm including this one in there as well. And that is UK1 Beyond the Crystal Cave. Now this one takes place in the world of Greyhawk on an actual island. I'm going to show you that island right here. And that's going to be on our regional map right here. It takes place on the Sabarite Island located right here. So we have Beyond the Crystal Cave, UK1. There is a 5e conversion that I've linked in the PDF to Drive Through RPG, so you can pick that up. So now we are officially at 19 adventures. But I told you there was more than 20. So the count continues. Here we go. What's the next adventure on our list? The next adventure on our list is the Sentinel. This one also takes place in the Hold of the Sea Princess in an area known as the Berghof. And there's a village there called Kushmir. So in the Berghof, let's find that on the map. UK2, this is a level 2 to 5 adventure, AD&D. There is a 5e conversion, 5th edition conversion for this as well. But let's take a look at where that is located. So in this valley right here where this lake and the river is, I'll zoom in here in the Hold of the Sea Princess. This area is known as the Berghof. And there's a village right here named Kushmir. In fact, I'm going to update these maps. I'll actually put the Berghof in here. I'm making a map key for all these adventures. I haven't done it yet, but I'll do that as well. You know, you guys deserve it, right? So this is where that takes place. There's another adventure that takes place here, which is the sequel to that, which is the Gauntlet, which takes place also in the Berghof. It's the sequel to the Sentinel. And this is an adventure for levels 3 through 6. Again, this takes place in that same area in the Berghof, in the villages surrounding in that valley there in the lower half of the Hold of the Sea Princess. So what's the next adventure in here? Well, we have Gargoyle, WG9. This one takes place on the edge of the Hool Marshes and the Tor. Let's take a look at where this one takes place. Here it is, by the way, WG9, a Greyhawk adventure called Gargoyle. Another adventure. I never got to play this one. I really wanted to play this one. It takes place on the edge of the Hool Marshes and the Tors. Let's take a look at the map really quick here. That would be right here. So right around here, there's a village named Rockburg. That's the village in which the Gargoyle adventure takes place. So you've got the Tor Mountains here, and you got the village of Rockburg, and then you have the Hool Marshes. So we are at number 22, 22 adventures. Now the next 3 adventures, I'm going to take this to 25 for you. The next 3 adventures come from Dungeon Magazine. I found all of them on archive.org. I gave you the links to those. The next one here is, let's take a look in here, and it is By the Wayside, Dungeon Magazine number 19. This takes place in the Hool Marshes in here. This deals with some stuff dealing with the Hold of the Sea Princess, a bunch of other criminal elements in here. I haven't spent too much time reading through it. I did download it and started reading through it, but I'll definitely be including this one in the Legends of Saltmarsh. The next adventure, so that'll be in the Hool Marshes. The next adventure we have is To Walk Beneath the Wave. This came from Dungeon Magazine number 77, and it actually references Saltmarsh in it. In fact, I'll read it to you right here. For those interested, Raunus is a village located 40 leagues northeast of Saltmarsh, the primary location for the classic U series modules. So let's take a look. I actually put this one on the map. I thought I should include it. Let's take a look here. And here it is. There's the village of Raunus right here along the coast. So this one is where that adventure takes place. Again, it's To Walk Beneath the Waves, Dungeon Magazine number 77. The 25th adventure, official adventure that's taking place in Legends of Saltmarsh and the surrounding areas in the world of Greyhawk is, drumroll please, the Weavers. Yes, the Weavers is another adventure in the Styes. Remember I mentioned we placed the Styes in the Port Torvin. The Weavers is in another adventures in there. I think with the Weavers and the Styes adventure, I think this is going to be a location I'm really excited to explore and flesh out. I think it's going to be a great location for rogues and thieves and secret cults. And you've got this port town. I mean, I think there's just some voodoo stuff should be going on there. I think it's going to be a really fun location to explore. So those are 25 official adventures, but I'm not going to stop there because I found in Ghosts of Saltmarsh, there are another, well, let's say 10 to 13 adventures in here. These aren't official adventures, but they are adventures that are listed in here. They give you NPCs, location names, ideas, concepts to flesh out adventures here in Ghosts of Saltmarsh. So let me show you what those are here. I got them right here. 13 adventures I have actually found in here, the core of these adventures in here. I put the page numbers up here for you. Let me tell you what they are. The first one's called Night. I call it, these are my names for them. I might change them, but these are adventures I'm going to be working on for Legends of the Saltmarsh here in 2024. The first one's called Nightshade Shadow. See, on page 22, they talk about the Dreadwood and they talk about Granny Nightshade, and she's made a bargain and a pact with the demons from the 9 hells. It talks about her fortress in the Dreadwood called the Citadel, the Castle Spiral, or the Spiral Citadel, her fortress in the Dreadwood. It even lists creatures and monsters in there. I mean, this could be a really amazing adventure in the Dreadwood. The next adventure I'm going to be putting together is called Shrieker's Call. I actually took the name right out of Ghosts of Saltmarsh on page 24. It happens in the Drowned Forest. Again, that's the same location with the cult. But there's a lot of interesting things going on there. There's a zombie there. There's a hut. There's some missing stuff going on there. I thought it'd be really cool to expand on that as an adventure that could surround that cult, which will take the players to that Temple of Elemental Evil adventure. The third adventure and the fourth adventure both take place in the Drowned Forest. The first one, they talk about this ruined tower in the Dunwater River. And it's all ruins, and part of it's been exploded by some alchemists, and there's some ooze or something there. So I've got an idea that it attaches to some lore about a plague that happened to Saltmarsh, and I'm going to attach that lore from Greyhawk, that actual lore from Greyhawk, to the ruined tower of alchemy in the Dunwater River. There's also a lot of references to bandits in the Dunwater who've been raiding some of the travelers going across. Remember here, I just want to show you really quick on the map, because this is kind of important. This will make sense in here. If I look at the Dreadwood map, you'll see that there's a road here from Saltmarsh, the Burl, it goes to Nine Oaks, all the way across to the Javan River. So on the Dunwater River down in here, there's a lot of bandits been raiding people in here. So that next adventure that I mentioned here, called the Bandits of the Dunwater, that's going to be taking place there. Now, there is a mine, actually. It's on the map. It's referenced in here, a dwarven mine right next to Saltmarsh on the coast. And there's no adventure in there. Now, there's a dwarven mine, there's no adventure. The first thing that popped in my head was Mines of Moria. I mean, we all know dwarves happen to dig too deep. And, well, in this one, I called it the Mines of the Underdark. So I'm going to be making a dwarven mine adventure. They dig too deep, release some creatures from the Underdark. That'll be happening in the Dwarven Mine, page 21 in Ghosts of Saltmarsh. There's also some very interesting things with the port of Seaton. Now, there was an old fishing village next to Saltmarsh. It was converted into a Royal Navy port to deal with the pirates. The town is called Seaton. And in Ghosts of Saltmarsh, they talk about rumors about the Scarlet Brotherhood infiltrating and bribing and extortion. So this is going to be a political intrigue adventure. I call it the Scarlet Spies, or I might call it something else, the Spies in Red or whatever. It's going to take place in the port of Seaton. Now, the next three adventures are listed in here are shipwreck adventures. In fact, one of the shipwrecks is really cool. It's the shipwreck of the Curiosity, and the Curiosity is attached to the very legendary mage of Mordecai, and there is a magical item that is also attached to somebody in the village of Saltmarsh. So there's a reference to this item. It's actually in the Ghosts of Saltmarsh. It's on the wreck. Players are going to have to find this wreck and find this item and bring it back to Saltmarsh. So it's pretty much writes itself. There's two more shipwrecks in there, the shipwreck of the Escape and the shipwreck of the Sinker, which is, I'm going to make that as a low level kind of introduction shipwreck adventure. Then we got 3 nautical adventures. We've got a ship that's run by dragons in here. Really excited about that one. We have another ship, a ship of undead, run by vampires called the Pale Prow. I'm looking forward to writing that nautical adventure. And then we have the Dreadnought, which is another huge ship in there. It's going to be a big epic battleship. I'm looking to do kind of a nautical epic battle with the Dreadnought. And then finally, adventure in here, which is really cool because it's a nautical adventure with a legendary island. It involves druids, and I'm calling this one Greyheart's Vengeance in here. Now, these are temporary names. I might change them as I work on these adventures, but this is part of that project for Legends of Saltmarsh that I'll be working on. These are the page references to those adventure seeds and ideas in there that I will be drawing upon. And you could, this is an idea for you if you want to do your own adventures. There's 13 more adventures that you can use right out of this book. Now, that's not all. I want to talk about something else that's completely amazing in the world of Greyhawk. Now, this has been done before, but in my opinion, not done as well or as huge of what they did with Greyhawk. So let's talk a little bit about this. Greyhawk is a world that Gary Gygax created in the late 70s. And it was the world in which most of his adventures that he wrote, and a lot of those early 70s and 80s adventures took place in the world of Greyhawk. It became the big location that people actually had all their adventures in. And Wizards of the Coast took over D&D, and they decided to do something really amazing. There was an organization which is the precursor to the Adventure League, which was called the Role Playing Game Association, RPGA. And they decided we are going to have really scale up the world of Greyhawk and have people write adventures in the world of Greyhawk. But we're going to do this on a worldwide level. They took the map of Greyhawk and they divided up the kingdoms in the world of the fantasy world of Greyhawk. And they gave it to different states in the United States and different countries, Canada, countries in Europe, countries in Asia, Australia, New Zealand, islands in the Pacific. And they asked adventure writers who all joined the Role-Playing Game Association to write official sanctioned adventures in the world of Greyhawk. But not only that, tens of thousands of people played these adventures from the year 2000 to 2008 at conventions, and how those players, the results of those players in those adventures actually changed what was happening in the world. So you literally had this living world of Greyhawk evolving as adventure writers were writing adventures for it, and tens of thousands of players were playing in it. Now, this happened from the year 2000 to 2008, and you're not going to believe what I'm about to tell you. There are over 1,000 adventures, officially sanctioned written adventures for the living world of Greyhawk. This is beyond the dozens of adventure modules, some of them I just talked about. This is beyond the Adventures and Dungeons magazine. This is another 1,000 adventures in the world of living Greyhawk. Unfortunately, they decided to roll out Dungeons and Dragons 4th edition. They announced in 2007 they were going to end the living world of Greyhawk. They did in 2008. But there's over 1,000 adventures out there. Now, I started scraping through and looking through those adventures. I didn't look through all 1,000 of them, but I did search through them to try to find some that took place in the area that we're talking about, the Hool Marshes, the Dreadwood, around Saltmarsh. And I found, it's probably not all of them, but I did find 22 adventures here. And you can see them. I put the code in here because they broke off the code into the kingdom. So you have KEO, that represents the kingdom of Kalan, that was Adventure 1-06, and they also have the Yeomanry. There's over 1,000 of these things. And so I found quite a few of these. There's a bunch that took place in the Dreadwood. In fact, I talked to somebody that actually played a couple of these, and they played a series known as the Forest series, called Forest of Iron, Forest of Ribbons, Forest of Scales, and Forest of Caverns. All of them took place in the Dreadwood Forest. Really, really cool. There's a bunch that take place in the Hold of the Sea Princess. There's a whole bunch I found in the Hool Marshes. There's one even that starts in Saltmarsh, and there's even one called the Death March, which includes the Bale Keep and Seaton. So, I mean, this is what I found. I mean, there's a whole bunch more. Now, I want to segue for a second here because we all know that Dungeons and Dragons are about to release here in 2024, the 1 D&D or 6th edition or whatever they decide to call it. And if I was working at Wizards of the Coast, and if you happen to be working at Wizards of the Coast and watching this video, I'm going to tell you, you are sitting on a treasure trove of 1,000 adventures, in which I think I could correctly argue is probably the most rich, detailed, more adventures than any other fantasy setting for role-playing games ever made. I mean, you think about this. It was created in 1970, and through 2008, not only did you have hundreds of adventure writers writing over 1,000 adventures, but you have dozens of adventure modules, dozens of adventures written in Dungeon Magazine. I mean, you know what I would do? This is what I would do. 1 D&D, I would announce the Greyhawk series, and we would come out with an adventure book. I don't know, I just grabbed Curse's Drive, but adventure book called the Dreadwood. And I would rewrite and update those Dreadwood adventures, tie them all together, make it level 1 to level 10 or whatever, rewriting those and bringing Greyhawk back. And you could release every quarter. I mean, with 1,000+ adventures, every quarter you could release a new location in the world of Greyhawk with all these adventures in it. That's what I would do. I don't know. Now, these adventures are very, very, very hard to find. I don't have all of them. I have a couple of them. I met a couple of people that had some. We've been sharing some stuff back and forth. I do have some suggestions here for you. If you're interested in the world of Greyhawk, there is a huge cult following for Greyhawk. There is a lot of people playing all of these old AD&D adventures. Some of them are playing them in 5th edition. Some of them are playing in Old School Essentials, the Basic Edition, AD&D. Some of them are even playing them in new OSRs. I know some people playing Shadow Dark and have been visiting the world of Greyhawk. There are 4 great websites I highly recommend. I will put those links in the descriptions down below. Greyhawk Online is a wiki. I've made some small contributions to it. It's a great wiki, constantly being updated all the time with locations and adventures that happen in the world of Greyhawk. Cannon Fire is an excellent website with a lot of articles and stuff on Cannon Fire for the world of Greyhawk. The Greyhawk Grognard is a great website, includes a lot of free downloads and guides to the world of Greyhawk. And one of my favorite is Anna B. Meyer. I'm a Patreon member of hers. She has made the most amazing world map. And actually, she made a globe of Greyhawk. And she's now got a new updated computer, and she's using some really amazing software to actually do topography mapping of the world of Greyhawk. This is a passion project of hers. You should definitely check it out. I also highly recommend joining the subreddit of Greyhawk because it's a great community. A lot of people have been sharing some stuff on there and helping me out along the way. So these are great references and resources that I will be using, and I suggest that you use, especially for Legends of Saltmarsh. Now, I've got 2 bonus adventures here at the very end that I want to introduce you to. And the next bonus adventure here is this treasure hunt. Now, this doesn't officially take place in Greyhawk or Saltmarsh, but when I tell you about this adventure, you're going to go, oh yeah, you need to include this. This is a level 0 adventure. That means your players are level 0. They don't even have a class yet. And your players get shipwrecked on the island. They go through all kinds of crazy adventures and mayhem on the island. At the end of the adventure, your player determines what their class is based on what happens along this adventure. It's a really amazing shipwreck adventure in Salt. I'm going to place this in Saltmarsh. Let me show you where I'm going to put this at in here. I'm going to use, let's go to the Javian charts. This adventure is going to take place out on the Misty Isles right here. So N4 Treasure Hunt, I'm including this in Legends of Saltmarsh. I think it's a great level 0 adventure. You're going to love it. Okay, the next adventure, the last bonus adventure that I want to share with you, that if we add all the adventures up, the official adventures, not including those 22 Living Greyhawk adventures, that means I'm going to be showing you 40 adventures. 40 adventures. I mean, you could play Legends of Saltmarsh for a decade and there'd still be content available for it. This next and last adventure that I want to show you, the bonus adventure, is one of my favorite adventures of all time. It is the first adventure I played in Dungeons and Dragons, and I played a lot of sessions in this location. It has a lot of nostalgia for me. It is also one of the most popular adventures ever for Dungeons and Dragons. And it also changed a lot in Dungeons and Dragons, because before this adventure, most adventures was just, dungeon delving. This one actually has some outdoor encounters. There's a swamp, there's a forest, there's also a keep in it. And I think it's awesome. Now, it is Keep of the Borderlands B2. Now, Keep of the Borderlands was the adventure that came out with the Mulvey box set, was the basic set. I ended up playing this quite a bit. It was my first introduction to Dungeons and Dragons. I know for many of the people from my generations that played Dungeons and Dragons, this was the adventure that many of us first played. And it's an amazing adventure. Now, what's interesting is Keep of the Borderlands, when it was released, wasn't placed in Greyhawk. It wasn't placed in any settings. It was setting neutral. You could place it anywhere. They did a re-release of this in the silver anniversary. I believe it was in 1999, called Return to the Keep of the Borderlands. I believe that's what it was called. And they decided to, because Greyhawk at this time became so popular, they decided to place it in Greyhawk. And they placed it in the southwest corner of the Yeomanry. And I thought, for me, when I was reading that, I'm like, you just stuck it there. I mean, it doesn't really make a lot of sense that it's there. You didn't really put a lot of lore to it. I just didn't feel it fit there. So I decided to place it in Legends of the Saltmarsh, in the adventure here. And I'm going to show you where and why. And I believe when you're placing an adventure in a setting, it has to fit two reasons. Number one, it has to fit the geography, obviously. But number two, it has to fit within the lore. Why is this here? Why is it happening in this particular location? So the first thing I did is I looked at the map this is the map that comes with that adventure. And you can see here, you got the keep over here, and then you got this road running east and west. You've got a huge dense forest above it. There's the Cave of the Unknown, the Cave of Chaos. And then below it, you have an outdoor adventure, which is a river, and there's a marshland here. And I'm thinking to myself, I know exactly where I'm going to put this on the map. Now, let me show you here on the map where I am actually placing that. And that is, we're going to go to the regional map here. That is right here below the Dread Woods. See, you've got the thick woods up here. I got a couple little hills, the road going east and west to Nine Oaks. Down below it, you've got the marsh and you've got the river here. Now, that's a perfect location. I think I can fit that in geographically speaking. But let me answer the why is this keep even built here? Because I have a pretty good reason why. Now, remember we talked about, and let me go to the regional map here. And the keep is located right here. Now, remember I told you about the war against the pirates. The pirates had taken all of this land to the south. There was a 30-year war with the pirates because the Kingdom of Keelan and their army was involved in military expansionism in the north. And so they pretty much let the pirates have free reign until the king's brother was actually killed, which they blamed the pirates. And then eventually the Royal Navy sailed from Gradsol down in the Javan Basin. But by the time they got down here and fought against the pirates had taken all of this land from the Kingdom of Keelan, the Southern Kingdom, and made it their own. They took the port of West Keep. In fact, the king of Keelan died in a battle to try to retake the West Keep. They took the Port Torvin, they took Monmurg, and they made that their capital in here. Now, what happened in here, remember, the Dreadwood is this geographic location that the armies cannot penetrate. It is highly dangerous. It's dense. And the only way for the Royal Army and the Navy to get south was either take the river, the Javan River, which would come down here into the Huel Marshes, which are dangerous. And since the pirates had taken the West Cape, that would be very dangerous. Or you'd have to sail from Gradsol down to Seaton, and the pirates had controlled the Javan Bay. So what they did was there was a road built from the Javan River, from Kimberton, along the bottom edge of the Dreadwood, all the way down through the Burl to Saltmarsh and to Seaton. And this allowed, it was an important road. It became for 100 years now, since that fight with the Sea Princess, this was the alternative route. If you were a merchant, if you were a trader, if you were an adventurer, if you were a soldier, anyone, and you needed to travel from the coast to get to the Javan River, very few people would take this river. It was unsafe to go through the Huel Marshes. And the pirates controlled Port Torvin. So the only way was this road across the base of the Dreadwood. And it was north of the Huel Marshes and south of the Dreadwood, two very dangerous locations. We already started talking about bandits that had taken the north part of the Dunwater, raiding people in here. So it makes sense, if you were the king, right, is to have a keep built right along the middle of this road. The keep would be a location for a garrison to fight off any of the monsters or creatures in the Dreadwood, or any of the creatures in the Huel Marshes, to deal with bandits in the Dunwater River. And it's a place for travelers traveling from east to west or west to east, a safe place to stay in the middle of this road, going from Kimberton all the way to Saltmarsh and to Seaton. So that is where I placed my keep of the Borderlands. And that brings us to a total of 40 adventures in the world and the legends of Saltmarsh. I hope you join me in this epic adventure in creating stuff for Legends of Saltmarsh. We're going to be releasing stuff every month here. If you become a member, you're going to get access to all this play stuff material, stuff that I'll be writing. I'll be releasing content for Foundry as well, for 5th edition, as well as system neutral setting, working with a great team of people. If you become a member, you already get access to the entire library of Legends of Barovia. Make sure you smash that like button, hit subscribe, hit that bell icon. Make sure to follow me on Ko-fi so you can be updated every time I release new information. I post it on our Ko-fi page. Visit the website and please explore. Thank you for providing me your time to listen to my stories and about the adventures in Saltmarsh. I'm so excited to do this. So until next time, may all your roles be critically successful, and a special thanks to all of my legendary supporters.